Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Iron Callahan wasn't the type to sit still. His nickname didn't come from his chiseled physique or steely gaze, but from the time he survived a plasma reactor explosion aboard the Odyssey during the war against the Zytherian coalition. 90 seconds in the vacuum of space, no armor, just sheer will and a vow to never give up. Now, aboard the Class 3 transport ship Aurora Dawn, Jake felt like a caged beast drifting among the stars. This mission wasn't about combat, storming enemy lines, or leading a strike team to obliterate a hostile base. Instead, Terran Alliance Command had saddled him with what he called paper pusher busy work, escorting a Zynari scientist to the Eridani system for a peace conference. Peace, what a joke. After 3 years of bloody conflict with the Zytherians, Jake didn't buy into the idea of harmony between species. Colonel, navigation systems are locked on target. ETA to Eridani, 72 hours. Echo, the ship's AI, reported through the control panel. All right, Echo. Keep us on course, and don't make this any more boring than it already is. Jake replied, crossing his arms, his eyes scanning the star-filled viewport in the cockpit. His silver-gray combat armor hugged his tall, broad frame, but today it was just for show. No firefights, no action. Just the silence of space and a passenger who was driving him up the wall. Dr. Silvara Kren, the Zynari scientist, strode into the cockpit with an air of unshakable arrogance. Her skin shimmered a pale blue, as if woven from liquid starlight. Her emerald hair cascaded over her shoulders, glinting like polished gemstones, and her golden eyes gleamed with a confidence bordering on condescension. She wore a form-fitting Zynari suit, its glowing patterns pulsing like living circuitry. Colonel Callahan, we need to discuss this journey, Silvara said, crossing her arms and standing tall, her tone more command than request. Jake swiveled his chair, raising an eyebrow. If you're asking are we there yet again, it's still 72 hours. Sit tight and enjoy the ride, Doc. Silvara's eyes narrowed, her thin lips curling into a sardonic smile. I'm not concerned with time. I'm concerned with safety. This ship is a rust bucket by Zynari standards. Your defenses can barely handle small asteroids, and your radar's slower than a sloth. Jake took a deep breath, swallowing his irritation. This rust bucket's carried me through 3 major campaigns, including the time I blew up a Zytherian fortress in the Orion cluster. If you don't like it, I can open the airlock and let you pilot your own fancy Zynari shuttle. Silvara let out a sharp laugh, the sound like silver bells laced with scorn. You humans always brag about your primitive victories. If I were piloting a Zynari craft, we'd have reached Eridani 2 days ago. Jake stood, towering over her by a head. Then why didn't you? Oh, right, because your daddy, Ambassador Kren, requested a Terran Alliance escort. Maybe he doesn't think you're good enough to go solo. Silvara's golden eyes flashed like daggers. Don't speak of my father. And don't pretend you understand Zynari culture just because you've fought a few alien enemies. Jake shrugged, turning back to the controls. Relax, Doc. I'm paid to get you to Eridani, not to debate philosophy with you. Silvara didn't leave immediately. She stood there, her gaze boring into Jake's back as if trying to unravel his thoughts. Finally, she spoke. I've read your file, Colonel. The Zytherian War, 90 seconds in vacuum without armor, and you survived. Impressive for a human. But I wonder, are you truly as strong as your record claims, or just lucky? Jake turned, a smirk tugging at his lips. Let's something we humans turn into wins. Wanna test me? Go ahead. But don't cry when you lose. She laughed, the sound less haughty this time, almost genuine. Interesting. Maybe this trip won't be entirely dull. She turned, her emerald hair swaying, and left the cockpit, leaving behind a faint scent of heated metal and wildflowers. Jake shook his head, returning to the ship's systems. But Silvara's question lingered in his mind. Luck or strength? He'd heard it too many times, from squadmates, commanders, even himself during sleepless nights haunted by memories of those he couldn't save. Silvara Kren wasn't one to waste time. As a leading Zynari scientist, she'd spent her life studying advanced energy systems, from superconductor plasma cores to cold fusion reactions. Her work, to be presented at the Eridani Peace Conference, could reshape how species harness power, but she wasn't here for peace. She was here because her father, Ambassador Kren, had ordered it. "This conference is your chance to prove your worth," he'd said. In the passenger quarters, Savara sat before a holographic interface, scrolling through data on her new energy core. But her thoughts drifted to Jake Callahan, the human with sharp eyes and a reckless attitude. Humans, she mused, always boasted about their resilience, but did they truly grasp what awaited at Eridani? This conference wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. Rumors swirled of a Zytherian remnant plotting to disrupt the peace. Silvara stood, approaching the viewport, staring into the void. She wasn't afraid of Zytherians, but she didn't trust this ship, or its commander. Jake Callahan might be a hero to humans, but to her, he was just a brash soldier, overconfident and lacking finesse. She tapped the internal comms. "Colonel, I need you to double-check the ship's defense systems. If we're attacked, I want to know how long we can hold out." From the cockpit, Jake's voice crackled back. "Defenses are fine, Doc. If Zytherians show up, we've got enough firepower to hold them off until help arrives. Now go rest, you're distracting me." Silvara frowned. "Hold them off? That's your plan? I expected more from the so-called Iron Callahan." Jake chuckled over the comms. "You want a plan? Fine. Step 1, I shoot anything that gets close. Step 2, you sit still and don't bug me. Happy now?" Savara cut the comms, shaking her head. Humans, she thought, always oversimplify everything. Yet, deep down, she couldn't deny that Jake's confidence was intriguing. Jake was recalibrating the navigation system when a shrill alarm blared. The console flashed red, displaying a warning. "Unidentified signal detected at 0.3 astronomical units. Echo, analyze the signal," Jake ordered, his hands moving swiftly across the controls. "Signal does not match any known Alliance or Zynari vessels. High probability of Zytherian origin or unknown entity," Echo replied. Jake's jaw tightened. "Percentage? 85% likelihood of Zytherian craft. Recommend activating defense protocols." Jake didn't hesitate. He engaged the defense systems, plasma shields humming to life. "Silvara, get to the cockpit now. We've got trouble." Less than a minute later, Silvara appeared, her emerald hair slightly disheveled, her eyes sharp with alertness. "What's happening?" "Unidentified signal. Could be Zytherians." "Strap in," Jake said, his focus locked on the radar. Silvara glanced at the screen. "Are you sure? It could be a stray merchant ship." "I don't bet on could be. If it's Zytherians, they're not here for tea," Jake replied, his hands adjusting the weapons systems. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, as if struck by a massive force. An explosion roared from the rear, and the cockpit lights flickered. "Echo, damage report!" Jake shouted. "Main engine hit. 40% power loss. Shields holding but cannot withstand another direct strike," Echo responded. Silvara gripped her seat, her face paling but composed. "We're actually under attack? Who'd dare?" Jake didn't answer. His eyes were glued to the radar, where a sleek, angular ship with Zytherian design was closing in. "Hang on, Doc. I'm about to show these bastards humans don't go down easy." He fired the plasma cannons, unleashing a barrage of energy bolts at the enemy ship. The screen lit up as the bolts struck the Zytherian shields, causing it to wobble but not retreat. "They're still coming," Silvara said, her hand instinctively clutching Jake's seat. "ICM," Jake replied, his voice steady but fierce. He switched to evasive maneuvers, weaving through the enemy's volleys. Another hit rocked the Aurora Dawn, sending sparks flying. "Echo, find the nearest planet for an emergency landing," Jake ordered. "Closest planet, Klyros 4, a desert world with a thin atmosphere. Distance, 0.1 astronomical units." Recommend immediate landing, Echo replied. Jake glanced at Silvara. You wanted action? Here's your chance. Brace yourself, we're going in hard. Silvara nodded, her eyes betraying a flicker of fear. She tightened her harness, gripping the armrests. Don't get me killed, Callahan. Jake grinned. Not yet, Doc. I still owe you a good argument. The Aurora Dawn plunged into Clyros 4's atmosphere at breakneck speed. External temperatures soared, the shields glowing red-hot. Jake gripped the controls, sweat beading on his forehead, his focus unbreakable. Are we gonna make it? Silvara asked, her voice trembling for the first time. Make it? Maybe not. Survive? Damn right, Jake said, adjusting the landing angle. The ship hit the ground with a bone-rattling crash, skidding across the red sands of Clyros 4, carving a long trench before lurching to a stop against a massive boulder. Jake exhaled, checking the console. Life support intact. Hull damage at 62%. Comms disrupted but reparable. He reported, unbuckling and standing. Silvara unstrapped, rising shakily, steadying herself on the seat. Where are we? Clyros 4. A deserted dust ball. No colonies, no nearby rescue. But there's a trading post a few hours' walk from here. That's our next stop, Jake said, tossing her a protective suit from under the console. Put this on. This desert ain't friendly. Silvara caught the suit, wrinkling her nose. This smells like something human. I'm not wearing it. Jake sighed. You want your skin blistered by hot sand or to get eaten by Clyros bugs? This'll keep you alive. Your call. Silvara glared but reluctantly donned the suit, muttering about its coarse fabric. Jake suited up, checked his gear, and opened the hatch. A blast of scorching air rushed in, carrying the scent of burnt sand and metal. Let's move, Jake said, stepping out. Silvara followed, her eyes scanning the crimson desert under Clyros 4's twin blazing suns. The Clyros 4 desert was a death trap. Endless red dunes stretched to the horizon, dotted with spiky shrubs whose metallic thorns glinted like knives. Jake led the way, consulting a wrist-mounted map, while Silvara trailed behind, grumbling about the heat and her uncomfortable suit. How do you humans survive this? She asked, wiping sweat from her brow. We don't live in this. We endure, Jake replied, eyes on the map. Keep moving. The trading post's not far. Before Silvara could respond, a strange sound echoed, a hissing, like shifting sand. Jake froze, hand on his plasma rifle. What's that? Silvara asked, stepping closer. Not sure. But it ain't the wind, Jake said, scanning the surroundings. The ground trembled, and from the sand erupted a massive armored insect, nearly 10 feet long, its razor-sharp mandibles snapping. Run! Jake yelled, yanking Silvara toward a nearby boulder. They sprinted, sand flying underfoot. The insect pursued, its mandibles clacking. Jake shoved Silvara behind the rock, drew his rifle, and fired. Plasma bolts struck the creature's armor, staggering it but not stopping it. Your gun's useless, Silvara shouted, searching for a weapon. Got a better idea? Jake snapped, firing to keep the beast at bay. Silvara spotted a jagged piece of debris from their ship in the sand. She grabbed it and hurled it at the insect, striking its eye. The creature screeched, rearing back. Jake glanced at her, impressed. Not bad, Doc. Now run! They raced through the desert, hearts pounding, until the insect's screeches faded. They collapsed behind a rocky outcrop, gasping for breath. What was that? Silvara asked, clutching another piece of metal she'd picked up. Clyros bug. They hunt by burrowing. Lucky it was just one, Jake said, checking his rifle. Silvara studied him, her arrogance softened. Weren't you scared? Scared? Sure, Jake said, smirking. But scared doesn't mean stop. That's what humans do best. Silvara fell silent, her gaze shifting from disdain to curiosity. The trading post appeared on the horizon, a ramshackle cluster of prefab buildings nestled against a cliff. As Jake and Savara approached, Clyro's 4-second sun set, painting the sky a vivid purple. The post looked like a junkyard, but to Jake, it was their only shot at fixing the ship and contacting the Alliance. Behind the counter stood a grizzled Terran, his skin darkened by sun exposure, a crooked grin on his face. "Colonel Callahan, huh? Heard you survived vacuum. Now you're stuck on this godforsaken rock?" Jake nodded. "We need comms gear and engine parts. Our ship was attacked." The man raised an eyebrow. "Attacked? Zytherians?" "Maybe," Jake said. "What V you got?" The man eyed Silvara, then Jake. "Got comms, but they'll take time to fix." "Engine? You need a new plasma core, and those ain't cheap." Silvara stepped forward, placing a hand on the counter. "Money's no issue. My father, Ambassador Kren, will cover all costs. But we need to leave now." The man laughed. "Ambassador Kren? You some Zynari princess? Fine, but I don't take alien credit. Cash or barter." Jake pulled Silvara back before she could retort. "We'll figure it out. Just get us the gear." As the man shuffled to the back, Silvara glared at Jake. "Why didn't you let me handle it? I could have made him cooperate." "Because I know guys like him," Jake said. "He doesn't care about your dad's title. But he'll help if we play his game." Silvara sighed. "You humans are needlessly complicated." Jake grinned. "That's called surviving, Doc. You'll get the hang of it." As night fell, Jake and Silvara worked together to repair the comms gear under the glow of a plasma lamp. Jake noticed Silvara wasn't just a theorist. She knew her way around circuits, even showing him how to boost the signal. "You're full of surprises," Jake said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Thought you were just good at reading books and sounding smart." Silvara smirked. "And I thought you were just good at shooting and bragging. Guess we're both wrong." They worked in silence, the clink of metal and the howl of the desert wind their only sounds. In that moment, amid Clyro's force heat and danger, a quiet respect began to form. Jake glanced at Silvara, her emerald hair glowing under the lamp. She was no longer just an arrogant scientist, she was a fighter, like him. For the first time, Jake wondered if this mission was more than just a job, if something greater lay ahead for them both. Jake and Silvara worked through the night under the flickering glow of a plasma lamp, the howling Clyro's 4 desert winds slipping through the cracks of the trading post. They patched up the comms gear enough to send a weak distress signal into the void, but the ship's plasma core remained a problem. Cody, the grizzled old man running the post, agreed to supply a new core, but at a steep price. Jake and Silvara had to retrieve a lost sensor device from a nearby cave, a den crawling with Clyro's insects. Jake wiped sweat from his brow, glaring at Cody. "You're kidding, right? We barely survived one of those damn bugs, and now you want us to stroll into their nest?" Cody shrugged, his crooked grin unwavering. "No sensor, no core. No core, your ship's grounded. Your call, Colonel." Silvara, tinkering with a circuit board, looked up. "We don't have a choice. If we don't get off this rock, that distress signal's worthless. I'm going with you, Callahan." Jake turned to her, eyebrows raised. "You? Into a bug-infested cave? I figured you'd rather stay in a lab crunching numbers." Silvara shot him a glare, but a faint smirk tugged at her lips. "I'm not as useless as you think. Zynari are trained to survive, not just study." Jake grinned. "All right, Doc. But if you get stuck in the sand, don't expect me to carry you out." Cody let out a hearty laugh, clapping Jake's shoulder. "I like this guy. Go get it done, and try not to die. I need customers to keep this dump running." Dawn on Clyro's 4 painted the sky a blazing orange, its twin suns hanging like judgmental eyes. Jake and Silvara, clad in protective suits, stepped out of the trading post, each lugging a backpack stuffed with gear and weapons. Jake checked the ammo on his plasma rifle, slinging it over his shoulder. Silvara carried a custom-built ultrasonic emitter, hoping it'd repel the bugs. She tested it, and a sharp screech echoed, making the sand tremble. The cave was a few miles out, hidden in a sheer cliff face amid the crimson dunes. The path was a gauntlet of scorching sand and glinting, razor-sharp bushes with thorns like surgical needles. Jake took point, scanning the desert, his hand ready on the trigger. Silvara followed, checking her emitter, her face tense despite her focus. The suit chafed her skin, and she kept adjusting it, muttering about the crude human design. Ever think about throwing in the towel? Silvara asked, breaking the silence. I mean, after everything, war, losing friends. Why keep going? Jake paused, staring at the endless dunes. Quitting's not in my blood. Humans, when shit hits the fan, we don't run. We fight. Or we go down swinging. Silvara tilted her head, her golden eyes catching the sunlight. That's what I don't get. Zynari prioritize logic, preserving life. But you humans, you charge into danger like it's your reason to breathe. Jake shrugged, resuming his march. Maybe that's why we're still kicking, despite being called primitive. Sometimes, not overthinking it is how you win. Silvara fell silent, but her gaze lingered on Jake's back. Though she'd never admit it, his stubborn fire was starting to intrigue her, like a blaze that refused to die. She wondered if the cold logic of her people was truly superior or just a way to dodge the emotions humans embraced so fiercely. They reached the cave, a dark gash in the cliff, faint hisses echoing from within like shifting sand. Jake checked his rifle, glancing at Silvara. Ready? Last chance to back out. Silvara activated her emitter, the high-pitched whine cutting through. I'm not bailing. Let's do this. Inside, the air was damp and stifling, reeking of burnt metal and decay. Jake's flashlight swept over jagged stone walls draped in shimmering webs, glinting like diamonds in the faint light. Silvara stayed close, clutching the emitter, her eyes darting through the shadows, heart racing. Where's the sensor? She asked, forcing calm into her voice. Cody said it's deep in, near an underground spring. Probably dragged there by the bugs. Jake replied, stepping carefully to avoid shaking the ground. Each footfall sent sand crunching, the sound echoing in the tight space. Minutes later, a familiar clacking rang out, the snap of insect mandibles. Jake signaled Silvara to stop, raising his rifle. From the darkness, 3 Clyros insects emerged, their armored shells gleaming under the flashlight. They moved slowly, but their razor mandibles rose, poised to strike. Silvara, hit the emitter. Jake barked, stepping back to gain distance. Silvara pressed a button, a sonic wave blasting out, making the insects freeze and screech in pain. But seconds later one lunged, its mandibles slashing at Jake. Jake fired, plasma bolts hitting the bug's armor, staggering it. Silvara grabbed a hefty rock and hurled it at the creature's head, knocking it back. The other 2 advanced, mandibles clacking like dueling blades. The sound's not working. Silvara shouted, backing up beside Jake, her hands trembling as she tweaked the emitter. Then we do it human style. Jake growled, pulling a plasma grenade from his pack. He lobbed it at the bugs, yanking Silvara toward a narrow crevice. An explosion roared, blue light flaring, and the insect's screeches died, replaced by the rumble of falling rocks. They panted, pressed into the crevice, bodies nearly touching in the tight space. Jake checked Silvara, his eyes scanning her face. You good? She nodded, hands still shaking. I didn't expect them to be that big. Jake chuckled. Welcome to reality, Doc. Let's keep moving before their buddies show up. Deeper in, the air grew colder, and Jake's flashlight dimmed. They found the spring, a shimmering pool under glowing ceiling stones, like a miniature starry sky. The sensor lay at the edge, half submerged, its cables frayed as if chewed. Jake approached, careful on the slick rocks. Don't touch the water. Silvara warned, staring at the pool. Something's off. Jake nodded, bending to retrieve the sensor. But the water rippled, and a massive Clyros insect, twice the size of the others, erupted from the depths, its scythe-like mandibles raised, water spraying everywhere. Son of a bitch. Jake muttered, shoving Silvara back. You handle the emitter, I'll draw its attention. Don't do anything stupid. Silvara snapped, but Jake was already moving, firing at the bug to lure it. The insect screeched, charging Jake with terrifying speed, sand and water flying. Jake dodged a swipe, but a mandible grazed his shoulder, tearing his suit. Blood seeped out, staining the fabric, but he kept moving. He leaped onto a rock, firing at the bug's eyes, making it thrash in pain. Silvara ran to the sensor, yanking it from the water with all her strength. She glanced at Jake, blood dripping from his shoulder, fighting alone, and a strange feeling surged, not disdain, but worry, almost fear. She cranked the emitter to max, the piercing sound making her wince. The insect staggered, giving Jake an opening to toss a plasma grenade into its maw. The explosion lit the cave, blue light blazing. The bug collapsed, waves rippling across the pool. Jake panted, clutching his wounded shoulder, leaning against a rock. Silvara rushed over, checking his injury, her fingers brushing his skin, feeling his warmth and steady pulse. "You're hurt," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Why do you always throw yourself into danger?" Jake smirked, wincing. "Because if I don't, who will?" Silvara shook her head, pulling a bandage from her pack and wrapping his shoulder with care. "You humans, you're impossible." Jake met her gaze, his eyes softening. "You're not so easy to figure out either, Doc. But I'm starting to think you're all right." Silvara paused, her golden eyes locking with his brown ones. In that moment, amid the cave's danger and darkness, a silent bond formed, though neither was ready to name it. They hauled the sensor back to the trading post, exhausted but alive. Cody inspected it, nodding approval. "Not bad. I'll get you that core. But fix your ship fast. Rumors say Zythurians are skulking around." Jake frowned, setting the sensor on the counter. "Zythurians? On Clyros 4? Cody shrugged, lighting a cigar. "Just talk. But after your ship got hit, I wouldn't be shocked." Silvara's eyes met Jake's, worry flickering. "If Zythurians are here, we need to move. My project can't fall into their hands. It could shift the galaxy's power balance." Jake nodded, a bad feeling brewing. The attack on their ship wasn't random. Someone, or something, didn't want them reaching Eridani. He thought of the peace conference, Silvara's work, and wondered if it was the real target, or part of a bigger scheme. Over the next 2 days, Jake and Silvara worked tirelessly on the Aurora Dawn. Silvara's Zynari tech know-how optimized the power systems, while Jake tackled the heavy mechanical repairs, sweat soaking his shirt. They grew closer, their bickering giving way to seamless teamwork. Silvara stopped calling the ship a junk heap, and Jake quit teasing her as the Zynari princess. Instead, they shared snippets of their lives, stories they never thought they'd tell. One night, by a small fire outside the post, flames dancing across Silvara's face, her emerald hair glinting, she spoke. "You've lost someone important, haven't you?" Jake stared into the fire, poking it with a stick. "My strike team. 12 guys, best brothers I ever had. Ambushed in the Orion campaign. I was the only one who walked away." Silvara's gaze softened, no trace of her old arrogance. "I'm sorry. My father, he always said emotions are a weakness. But watching you, I'm starting to think he's wrong." Jake gave a quiet laugh, his eyes on the flames. "Emotions aren't weak. They keep us alive, make us fight. Ever felt something so strong it changed you?" Silvara paused, then nodded slowly. "My father wants me to be the perfect Zynari, logical, emotionless, serving the greater good. But sometimes I want to be free, to feel, like you humans do." Jake looked at her, firelight reflecting in her golden eyes. "Freedom's worth fighting for, Silvara. And I think you're tougher than you know." She smiled, no sarcasm this time. "Maybe you're not so bad, Callahan." They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the desert wind whispering. In that moment, amid Clyros 4's heat and danger, a deep respect bloomed, and maybe something more. But peace didn't last. On the third morning, as the Aurora Dawn neared completion, a massive explosion shook the post. Jake and Silvara raced outside, spotting black smoke rising from the storage depot. Cody sprinted up, pale, clutching an old rifle. "Zythurians! They're hitting the depot. Jake drew his plasma rifle, pulling Silvara behind a metal wall. Through the smoke, 3 small Zytherian ships landed, armored warriors spilling out, energy weapons glinting. They moved with lethal precision, tearing through everything. Silvara, stay here, Jake said, ready to charge. No. She grabbed his arm, eyes blazing. I'm not letting you go alone. We do this together. Jake saw the fire in her eyes, unyielding. He nodded. All right. Stick with me, and don't do anything dumb. They crept through the posts, using metal containers for cover. Jake dropped a Zytherian warrior, snagging its angular energy rifle, heavier than his but packing a punch. Silvara tweaked her emitter, its frequency scrambling the enemy's formation, making some warriors stumble. But at the depot, a figure emerged from the smoke, not Zytherian, but Zynari, cloaked in black, his golden eyes cold. His silver-green hair was tied back, and he held an energy emitter. Silvara Kren, he said. Your project belongs to us. Silvara froze, gripping her emitter. Kale? You work for my father. Why are you here? Kale sneered, stepping closer. Your father wants your work kept from Eridani. The peace conference threatens Zynari interests. Hand over the data or die. Jake stepped forward, rifle aimed at Kale. She's not going anywhere. Back off, or I'd blow your head off. Kale's eyes dripped with contempt. A human? You picked the wrong ally, Silvara. Before Jake could fire, Kale activated his device, a shockwave knocking them back. Jake hit the ground, his rifle skidding away. As he scrambled up, Kale dragged Silvara toward a Zytherian ship. She fought, but Kale gripped her wrist, her emitter falling to the sand. Silvara! Jake roared, charging despite the pain. Zytherian warriors blocked him, their weapons blazing. Jake dodged an energy bolt, grabbing his rifle and firing, but they were too many. He saw Silvara shoved aboard the ship, its hatch closing. Cody appeared, firing from a nearby container. Colonel, we can't let him take her! Jake gritted his teeth, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. I know. Cover me! He charged through the smoke, dodging blasts closing on the ship. But a Zytherian warrior loomed, nearly 10 feet tall, its armor gleaming, wielding a glowing red energy sword. Jake skidded to a stop, panting. All right, you big bastard. Wanna dance? Let's dance. He fired, bolts glancing off the warrior's armor. It moved like a shadow, its sword slicing a container in half. Jake rolled, hurling a metal shard at its face, then shot its knee joint. The warrior collapsed, but the Zytherian ship lifted off, carrying Silvara and Kale. Jake stood, gripping his rifle, watching the ship vanish into Clyro's forest sky. He slammed his fist into the sand, rage and helplessness surging. Cody reached him, hand on his shoulder. We'll get her back, Colonel. But something's off. Why is the Zynari working with Zytherians? Jake didn't answer right away. He stared at the horizon, where the ship had disappeared. I don't know. But I'm finding out. And I'm bringing her back. Jake stood in the Clyro's 4 desert, plasma rifle gripped tight, eyes locked on the sky where the Zytherian ship had vanished, taking Silvara with it. Gunfire echoed around the trading post, but all he heard was his heart pounding in his chest. Cody, the grizzled post manager, fired from a nearby container, shouting through the smoke. Colonel, we gotta fall back. There's too many. Jake gritted his teeth, blood from a cut on his forehead trickling down his cheek. No retreat. I'm not letting them take her. Cody shook his head, dropping a Zytherian warrior closing in. You're nuts, Callahan. But if you're gonna die, take some of those bastards with you. Jake didn't respond. He dove behind a metal container, dodging an energy bolt from a Zytherian weapon. In his mind, the image of Silvara being dragged onto the ship by Kale replayed, her golden eyes blazing with anger, tinged with fear. He'd promised to get her to Eridani safely. He wasn't about to break that promise. Surveying the trading post, now a battlefield of black smoke and twisted metal, Jake spotted the Aurora Dawn at the edge, its new plasma core installed but not yet fired up. If he could reach it, he might catch the Zytherians. First, he had to survive the warriors swarming the area. "Cody, cover me!" Jake yelled, bursting from cover. He fired, dropping 2 Zytherians, but another leaped out, its red energy sword slashing. Jake rolled, grabbing a metal shard from the ground and hurling it at the enemy's visor. The warrior staggered, and Jake finished it with a plasma bolt to the chest. Cody jogged up, panting. "Your ship's 100 yards out. But they're converging there. Big guy's leading him, looks like their commander." Jake nodded, checking his ammo. "All right. I need you to do something. Hit the depot, grab the plasma booster. If I make it to the ship, I'll need max speed." Cody raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna chase a whole Zytherian fleet? Solo?" Jake smirked. "Not solo. I've got Aurora Dawn. And I've got a reason to come back alive." Cody shook his head, but his eyes gleamed with respect. "Fine, Colonel. Go for it. I'll get the booster." Jake moved through the posts, using smoke and debris for cover. He dropped another Zytherian, but nearing the Aurora Dawn, he saw the commander Cody mentioned. The figure towered over 10 feet, clad in obsidian-like armor that shimmered, wielding a massive energy cannon. He stood before the ship, as if expecting Jake. "Human," the commander said through a translator, his metallic voice booming. "You're more persistent than I expected. But you cannot stop our plans." Jake aimed his rifle, eyes cold. "What plans? Snatching Savara for her project? Or is there something bigger?" The commander tilted his head, sizing Jake up. "Kren's work is merely a piece. The Eridani Peace Conference will collapse, and the Zytherians will reclaim dominance. Your kind will kneel." Jake snorted. "Humans don't do kneeling. Now step aside or die." The commander raised his cannon, firing a blue energy beam. Jake dove, the blast scorching a trench in the sand. He returned fire, but his plasma bolts only scratched the armor. Jake leaped onto a container, tossing a plasma grenade to distract, then sprinted for the ship. The commander was faster than expected, cutting him off with a powered gauntlet punch that sent Jake sprawling. Jake coughed blood, staggering to his feet. He glanced at the Aurora Dawn, just yards away, and thought of Silvara. "No stopping," he muttered, gripping his rifle. He charged, dodging a slash, and fired at the commander's arm joint, where the armor was thinner. The commander hissed, dropping his cannon. Jake lunged, jamming his rifle into a gap at the neck and firing. The commander collapsed, armor cracking, smoke rising. Jake didn't pause to check. He raced to the Aurora Dawn, climbed into the cockpit, and powered up. Cody appeared at the hatch, tossing him the plasma booster. "Good luck, Colonel." "Don't let me down." Jake nodded. "Thanks, Cody. If I make it, I owe you a case of beer." The ship shuddered as the engines roared, and Jake slammed the throttle, launching the Aurora Dawn into Clyro's forest sky, chasing the Zytherian trail. On the Zytherian ship, Silvara sat strapped to a metal chair in a holding cell, her wrists bound by glowing alloy cuffs. Kale stood before her, his cold golden eyes fixed on a device displaying her project data. The ship hummed, engines steady in the void. "Your father would be proud," Kale said, scrolling through the data. "This could power an entire fleet. The Zytherians will pay dearly for it." Silvara glared, her eyes blazing. "You're betraying our people, Kale. My father would never want this." Kale's laugh was icy. "Your father craves power, Silvara. He knows peace with the Terran Alliance weakens us. The Zytherians are our path to dominance." Silvara clenched her jaw. "You're wrong. My father's harsh, but he'd never sell out our kind. And I won't let you take my work." Kale stepped closer, gripping her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You have no choice. This data goes to the Zytherian base. As for you, they might keep you as a hostage. Or worse." Silvara spat in his face, unflinching. "Humans taught me something, Kale. Never give up." Kale wiped his face, his expression darkening. Humans? You mean that crude soldier? He's dead in Clyro's sands. Silvara smiled, though her heart tightened. You don't know Jake Callahan. He doesn't die that easy. Jake piloted the Aurora Dawn through space, radar tracking the Zytherian signal. The plasma booster pushed the ship to blistering speeds, but he knew he was up against a fleet. Echo, the ship's AI, chimed in. Zytherian signal detected at coordinates 379. 3 escort ships and 1 primary vessel. Recommend avoiding engagement. No avoiding, Jake said, slotting the booster into the engine system. Echo, prep plasma cannons and guided missiles. We're going in hot. Survival odds 12%, Echo replied. Jake grinned. Good enough. Humans have one with worse. The Aurora Dawn surged forward, and Jake spotted the Zytherian fleet on the screen, 3 sleek escorts and a massive primary ship, shaped like a metallic shark. He launched 2 guided missiles, obliterating an escort, but the others retaliated, energy beams rocking the Aurora Dawn. Jake weaved through the barrage, firing plasma cannons to destroy a second escort in a fiery blast. The primary ship unleashed a powerful beam, grazing the Aurora Dawn, making the cockpit lights flicker. Echo, damage report. Shields at 30%. Auxiliary engines damaged. Recommend retreat, Echo said. No retreat, Jake growled, steering straight for the primary ship. He fired a missile salvo at its engine bay. A massive explosion erupted, the Zytherian ship lurching, smoke trailing from its rear. Jake maneuvered the Aurora Dawn alongside, deploying grappling hooks to latch onto the enemy ship. He donned his combat armor, grabbed an extra energy rifle from the armory, and opened the hatch. Echo, keep the ship steady. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, self-destruct. Affirmative, Colonel, Echo replied. Jake leaped onto the Zytherian ship, landing in a dark metal corridor. He moved fast, dropping 2 guards, and made his way to the holding cells. Over the internal comms, he heard Kale. Prepare data transfer. The prisoner will be dealt with after we reach the base. Jake's jaw tightened, and he sped up. He reached the cell, finding Silvara strapped to a chair, Kale standing over her, holding the data device. Jake aimed his rifle. Let her go, Kale. Now. Kale turned, sneering. Persistent human. But you're too late. Silvara's eyes lit up. Callahan! I knew you'd come! Kale activated his device, sending an energy wave at Jake. He dodged, firing at Kale's hand, knocking the data device free. Kale drew an energy sword, charging. They clashed, rifle against blade, sparks flying. Silvara struggled, prying at her cuffs with a metal shard from the floor. She broke free, grabbed the data device, and smashed it, destroying the data. Kale, my work will never be yours! Kale roared, turning toward her, but Jake intercepted, slamming a fist into his face. Don't touch her, Jake said, firing a plasma bolt into Kale's chest. He collapsed, motionless. Jake rushed to Silvara, checking her. You okay? She nodded, panting. You cut it close. But we gotta move, this ship's gonna blow. They raced back to the Aurora Dawn, dodging remaining Zytherians. Aboard, Jake maxed the engines, detaching just as the Zytherian ship exploded, a blinding flash lighting the void. They returned to Clyros 4, landing near the trading post. Cody ran out, stunned to see them alive. I bet you wouldn't make it, Colonel. Guess I lost. Jake laughed, clapping his shoulder. Hold on to that beer case. We'll be back. In the Aurora Dawn's cockpit, Silvara sat beside Jake, her gaze softer than ever. Thank you, Callahan. I wouldn't have made it without you. Jake shrugged. Humans are good at surviving, and dragging others along. Silvara smiled. I'm starting to see why my father was wrong about your kind. You're not just some roughneck soldier. Jake met her eyes, his warm. And you're not just a stuck-up scientist. We make a hell of a team. She laughed, her hand brushing his. Maybe. But we still have to hit Eridani. The peace conference is waiting. Jake nodded, firing up the ship. You got it, Doc. Let's roll. The Aurora Dawn soared into space, leaving Clyros 4 behind. Jake and Silvara knew their journey wasn't over, that the Zytherians and Ambassador Kren's schemes still loomed. But now, they weren't just a colonel and a scientist. They were partners, and maybe, one day, something more. Dear listener, as you close the final pages of Under the Starfire, I hope the fiery resolve and grit of Jake Callahan and Silvara Kren have left a spark in your heart. This tale isn't just a saga of survival, it's a testament to the power of unity, trust in your comrades, and the strength to see past prejudice to the true worth of another. At its core, Under the Starfire is about how Jake and Silvara, strangers with clashing views, a roughneck, soldier and an arrogant scientist, learn to respect and lean on each other. Jake, with that unbreakable human spirit, never backed down, even when the odds of survival were a measly 12%. Silvara, raised in a culture of cold logic, found strength in the emotions and fighting spirit Jake inspired. The takeaway? True power doesn't come from guns or brains alone, but from the bonds between souls, from daring to trust someone despite your differences. When I wrote this, I pictured a universe where humans, dismissed as primitive, shine through sheer stubborn will. But I'm curious, did Jake and Silvara's journey hit home for you? Did Jake's dogged persistence fire you up? Did Silvara's choice to smash her own data to protect her ideals make you think? And that moment they became true partners, hands brushing in the Aurora Dawn's cockpit, did it stir your faith in connections that defy barriers? Like Jake charging into the void to save Silvara, I'm reaching out across the expanse of imagination, hoping for your thoughts. This story lives because of you, your reactions, feelings, and feedback shape the tales I'll spin next. Are you itching to know more about Ambassador Kren's schemes? Want to see Jake and Silvara tackle new challenges at Eridani? Share your thoughts, whether a quiet gasp of awe or a deep dive into what moved you. We're partners in this, storyteller and listener, lighting up worlds that only exist when our minds meet. Until we cross paths under another star, I leave you with a question: what would you fight for, even when the universe is stacked against you?